You'll oftentimes hear teams, especially NA teams, when they go internationally, say something like, "We were winning so many scrims. How did we fail and to make it out of group stage?" And in this video, I'm going to try to address one of the reasons why that is. This is the return of Put Me in Coaching, and my name's Ned. So there's three types of practicing as I define them, which is practicing passively, which means going into solo queue every day and just making sure your skills don't deteriorate. Is just mindlessly shooting baskets if you're a basketball player. It's just running your laps or your trail every day if you're a runner. It's going through the motions to make sure your skills don't deteriorate. The second is stress test practicing. This is doing your best to simulate the actual practice environment and actually trying to win. This is something you usually do closer to when you're actually going to compete, or when you want to make sure skills that you practiced previously apply to the real thing, the real game. And the third, and the one that we're going to cover today, is practicing with intent. And this means that you're trying to hone actual in-game skills that you don't already have. They're new skills, and you're repeating them over and over again. And when you're practicing with the intent of making these skills better, not with the intent of winning the scrim or winning the sparring session or winning the practice game, whatever it is. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about stress test practicing. Stress test practicing is when a team goes into a scrim block. They've already learned a whole bunch of skills, and they want to make sure those skills apply to competitive League of Legends when they actually go on stage. So they do their best to play against this team who they hope is also trying their best to win the scrim. And if they win, that means their practice has been working. And if they lose, that means their practice has been for nothing. And that's harsh, but it's kind of true. If you don't win, then your practice hasn't been effective enough. Of course, there's other factors, but ultimately it does come down to that. And so this is something like when I would do Muay Thai, we did Shark Tank sparring, meaning that one person would spar and it'd be hard sparring. Usually our sparring was only 30%. This is up to 100%, except for you really weren't trying to hurt your opponent. If you landed a really strong shot that could potentially lead to a knockout, you wouldn't follow up with actual hard shots afterwards. You would just hit them to make sure you wobbled them, and then you would stop. You wouldn't actually hurt them, and both of you would know that the person who landed the hard shot could have knocked you out. But you did simulate the practice environment. You are actually going against somebody who is trying to hit you as hard as they can at times. It's just the difference between practicing versus a teammate and actually fighting an opponent. But ultimately, one person versus as many as 8 people, and they would rotate in and out. So you would get a fresh fighter every round. This person would have to fight against a fresh fighter every round, but they would be exhausted by the end of it. And so this was to simulate what it's like to be in an actual fight, because it is exhausting to be in an actual fight. That's stress test practicing. Now, practicing with intent is taking a skill, a specific thing. For League of Legends, it could be last hitting. It could be communicating with your team better. It could be late game macro play, like for the shot caller, for example, making sure they call the right plays that you had discussed with the strategic coach beforehand. It could be tower dives. You could literally just try to force tower dives over and over again, even when they're not necessarily optimal, because you want to practice swapping tower aggro and making sure you land the CC abilities, and making sure the support tanks first or the jungler tanks first, or making sure you use your invulnerability abilities at the right time, and literally just trying to tower dive as many times as you possibly can, because that's what you want to learn. And so when you practice with intent, you're not concerned about winning. You're concerned about learning a new skill and making sure you can hone that new skill. When I was doing Muay Thai, I'll go back to that example again. My coach told me, "You're really tall for your weight class." I'm 5'10", and at the time I was around 140 to 145 pounds. So we want to use your long legs as an advantage. So we're going to practice the push kick. Push kick is a distancing kick where you throw your foot to just the flat of your foot to their chest, and you push them away, and it creates distance, and it scores. It counts as a strike. It scores you points, and it lets you sort of reset. So if you land a combination and then you push kick, they don't have time to retaliate with a combination of their own. And then he also wanted me to learn a combination where it's just a straight jab into an inside leg kick with my lead leg being my left leg, and it's a leg kick to the calf. It's a destabilizing kick, and it causes a little bit of pain. Um, but I wasn't supposed to throw that one as hard as I could. It's literally just almost like a jab with my lead foot to destabilize them instead of combinations after that. More hard hitting combinations like following up with a straight right or a right kick. Um, but anyways, when I was sparring, I'd have to throw those things over and over again: jab, push kick, lead leg kick to the inside leg, and I would lose. I'd lose a lot, or lose a lot of sparring sessions, but I wasn't trying to win. And sometimes I would try to win, and my coach would come in and he'd say, "Hey, no, don't try to win. You're trying to practice. Um, you're trying to practice these techniques. You need to make sure these techniques are perfect. You need to be able to land these techniques even when your opponent is expecting them. Because if I can do it when my sparring partner is expecting it, then I can do it when my opponent in an actual fight isn't expecting it because they've never fought against me or never sparred against me." And so when you practice with intent, you're not trying to win, you're just trying to increase a skill. And the mistake a lot of American teams make when we go to Worlds and we boot camp is we're stress test practicing the whole way through. And we're showing all these teams all these skills that we've already perfected, and we're not trying to learn anything new because we want to test our mettle against better teams. But the better teams in Asia and in Europe and now are just practicing new things. They're trying new champions out. They're trying new rotations. They're understanding the meta. They're doing new item builds. They're like, maybe I'll play Singed top, right? Uh, and they'll figure it out, and maybe it works. And then they don't actually they save that stress test practicing till the last few days to make sure everything that they had practiced beforehand with intent is actually good. And I think this is a failure of coaching of NA teams, which is that they don't remind their players to practice with intent when the players want to win, because let's be honest, it feels bad to lose the scrims. The coaches um, don't come in and say, well, this is something that we need to work on, and that this is something that you guys, I know it sucks to lose right now, but we're not actually losing, we're just practicing. We're not trying to win these. So you need to understand that rather than trying to win, we need to be trying to practice. We need to be honing these skills that we've talked about, whatever they are. And it could be anything that the team decides they want to learn and the coach decides is important to learn. So um, I think that's just something I hope for in the future, that is particularly North American teams will learn is more important than just trying to win scrims over and over again, um, and that coaches will be willing to remind them to do. My name's Ned, and this has been the return of Put Me in Coaching.